Okay, let's unpack this. For years, I feel like the whole conversation around seeing the world's greatest mountains, I mean, the kind of scale that just completely redefines things for you, it's always been dominated by two places.
Nepal and the European Alps.
Exactly. But something shifted. In the last, 5 years maybe, we've seen this massive pivot. All the interest is pulling toward this one route that promises that same insane height, but with genuine, unfiltered, and, frankly, a profoundly challenging adventure.
We are talking about the Karakoram Highway.
The KKH.
The KKH, it's this journey that starts in the relative calm of Islamabad and just winds its way ruthlessly north deep into Pakistan's Gilgit-Baltistan region.
It's the ultimate geographical pivot point. It really is.
It is. And when you look at the social media feeds, the curated version, you're just picturing these iconic sweeping shots of silent glaciers, right?
And the apricot harvest in summer, the incredible colors.
Yes, and that overwhelming hospitality, that feeling you get from the locals, that powerful raw energy summed up in that one phrase, Pakistan Zindabad. Which, for anyone who doesn't know, it just means long live Pakistan. It really does capture that pride, that resilience, and the intense, welcoming spirit you find everywhere.
It's a beautiful energy. But, we aren't here just to validate the drone shots.
No, not at all.
Exactly. We have to address the tension, the immediate tension between that highly curated image, which is real, don't get me wrong, but it's incomplete, and the gritty, immediate realities of what it actually takes to travel there.
This is the reality check, the price of admission, so to speak.
It is. And we've sort of boiled it down to 3 core challenges that really define this whole deep dive for anyone thinking about going.
Okay, so challenge number 1 is all about infrastructure resilience. Or maybe the lack thereof. Well, the Karakoram Highway is this monumental achievement.
I think one of our sources called it the single greatest engineering feat you can travel on.
And they might be right. But what the glossy photos leave out is that this road exists in the world's most active tectonic collision zone.
Which means?
It means that in peak travel season, it's a catastrophic mudslide and glacial runoff hazard. You simply cannot travel there without assuming you're going to be delayed. A big delay.
Okay, so that's a big one. And challenge number 2, and this is the one that I think causes the most anxiety for people with, limited vacation time.
The domestic flights.
The domestic flights, specifically the very desirable ones from Islamabad up to the mountain hubs like Skardu or Gilgit. The data is just brutal on this. Our sources suggest you are facing a 50% chance of cancellation.
50%.
50. It's literally a coin flip. And that could take out 2 or 3 days of your trip before you even see the mountain you paid all that money to see. That's a huge risk factor.
A non-negotiable risk. And that brings us to challenge number 3, which is about the budget mythology.
Ah, the old $1-a-day backpacker myth.
It is absolutely dead in the Karakoram. Dead.
While it can be profoundly cheap, and we will get into that, the logistical expenses you need for even a moderate level of comfort or speed or safety, they stack up incredibly fast. So it's not the bottom-barrel cheap destination some of the older guidebooks might paint it as.
No, you're paying for specialized logistics, and that has a price.
And let's just be brutally honest about the major downside here. The primary comfort killer, and this is true across all budgets, is hygiene. We have to state this up front. If you are committing to a high-mountain trek in this region, getting sick, some kind of gastrointestinal distress, it's a when, not an if.
It's almost a certainty. The sanitation infrastructure, it is improving, but it's lagging way behind the hype and the sudden influx of tourists.
It's a harsh trade-off. But it's also the context for the bold claim that draws everyone there in the first place.
Right. Despite the dust, the near certainty of dysentery, and the dangers of the road, the KKH is this astonishing testament to human tenacity. The fact that this road even exists at all is mind-boggling.
And the reward waiting at the end of that road, specifically the Hunza Valley, is just consistently portrayed in almost everything you read as the closest thing to the utopia left on the planet.
So that's the mission today. This deep dive is designed to go beyond those glossy videos, beyond the hype. We want to give you the real budget bands, assess the real safety risks.
And really distinguish between, the scary CNN headlines and the actual on-the-ground reality.
Exactly. And ultimately answer that one central question, is all that headache actually worth the reward?
I'm ready. Let's get into the context. Let's unpack this last frontier syndrome that's driving the whole thing.
So The rise of Pakistan as this must-visit hotspot has been incredibly rapid. I mean, think back 5 years. A lot of major Western travel insurance providers, they just flagged the northern areas as completely off limits.
Totally. It was a no-go zone for many.
And now, like we said, you can't open Instagram without seeing sweeping shots of the Pasu cones or these vast mountain deserts. What was the actual logistical trigger for that massive shift?
Well, what's so fascinating here is how a single government policy change can just instantly unlock a destination. The core trigger was the shift in the e-visa policy.
The EVs before, it was this painstaking, often impossible process for most Western nations to get permission. It was a nightmare of paperwork. And then it shifted. It went to a 24-hour approval time, sometimes even less.
Wow.
And that just opened the floodgates. It fundamentally changed the entire travel industry's perception of the country almost overnight.
So that's the enabler. But the underlying cause, that's more about supply and demand, right? This last frontier thing we're talking about.
Absolutely. We've seen Southeast Asia, for all its undeniable appeal, become incredibly saturated. It's just packed.
And Europe, especially the western parts, has priced out a huge number of budget and mid-range travelers. It's just too expensive.
So Pakistan fills that vacuum. It provides this intense, genuinely challenging adventure with incredible value for people who are really seeking the wild.
But that immediate access, that's got to create some skewed expectations, right? Travelers see the gorgeous drone shots, they see the destination, the endpoint, but they don't see the journey.
They completely fail to factor in the complexity and the time. The reality often means surviving a grueling 16-hour drive in a van with no AC, often crammed with people, just to get to the spot where that perfect drone shot was launched.
So the travel time itself is part of the endurance test. It's not vacation.
It is absolutely an endurance activity, and the source of that endurance is the geography itself. We're focusing exclusively on the north here, on Gilgit-Baltistan. We're leaving the big cities like Lahore and Karachi out of this conversation for now.
And this northern region is defined by its, what our sources call, incredibly violent geography.
Yes. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, you're not just driving through mountains, you are literally driving through the collision zone of the Indian and Eurasian tectonic plates.
Wow.
These mountains aren't just high, they're actively rising. And they're actively crumbling. The sheer scale and that constant geological energy, it means massive amounts of rock are being shed constantly.
So you're driving through a landscape that is literally changing around you.
It's dynamic, it's dangerous, and it is constantly shifting around the road that's been carved into it.
Which is why the whole idea of the KKH being paved is so relative. Yes, it's a paved two-lane road in most places, which in itself is a miracle.
But that paving means almost nothing when a huge chunk of a mountainside just collapses, or a glacier sends this massive tongue of ice and rock across the road overnight.
And then you're just stuck.
You're stuck. You need heavy machinery and hours, sometimes days of delay. The trip is not just a drive. You're navigating through what are essentially transit or survival zones. They demand absolute respect.
And it's interesting, most of the social media focuses on one specific place. The Hunza Valley.
Rightly so. It's visually stunning, highly educated, and remarkably safe. And that's largely because it has a majority Ismaili population.
Can you explain that a little?
Sure. The Ismaili community is a branch of Shia Islam that follows the Aga Khan, who places this enormous emphasis on education, on moderation, and on infrastructure development.
So that gives Hunza a completely different cultural context.
A profoundly liberal, stable, and welcoming one. But here's the catch.
There's always a catch.
To get to Hunza, you have to drive through regions like Kohistan and Chilas. And the vibe, the cultural norms, the perceived safety, it shifts dramatically in those long, arduous transit zones.
And that leads directly to the core mental prep you need for this trip. Control and flexibility.
Or the lack of control.
Yeah.
If you usually travel to, say, Switzerland or even popular routes in Peru, you're used to being in complete control of your itinerary. You book a train, it arrives on time.
You book a flight, it flies.
Not here. In the Karakoram, the mountain decides if you move. You cannot schedule around plate tectonics. If you're a rigorous planner who needs a 15-minute slot itinerary, the Karakoram will give you a nervous breakdown by day 3, guaranteed.
That is the critical mental shift, isn't it? The mountain decides. But doesn't that level of uncertainty just paralyze the whole planning process?
It does, if you approach it with a Western mindset. The required attitude is just an acceptance of the fluidity of time. You have to see it not as an inconvenience, but as part of the experience.
So you have to trust your local driver's judgment, the weather,
Yeah.
and just build in buffer days.
You have to budget days for just sitting still in a guest house waiting for a landslide to clear. Flexibility is the currency of the North. It's the only thing that has value.
And then there's the social dimension. The authenticity overload, as one source put it.
The unfiltered human interaction is something most travelers are just not prepared for. You are a profound novelty there.
You're a celebrity, whether you want to be or not.
Yeah.
People will constantly stop you. They will ask for hundreds of selfies. You are treated like a walking attraction.
It doesn't matter if you're an extrovert who loves that or a deep introvert who just wants to be left alone.
It's socially exhausting either way.
Right. And it's important to understand the context. This isn't intrusion. It stems from this genuine, deeply embedded hospitality and curiosity. But managing that constant attention, especially after a 14-hour drive in blistering heat, it just becomes another layer of endurance you need for the trip.
So if flexibility is the mental requirement, what about the physical reality? You land in Islamabad, the staging ground. You get to ISB, the new international airport, and it's surprisingly sleek, modern, almost sterile.
It can be a bit of a shock, really. It completely defies the chaotic South Asian airport stereotype.
It does. And Islamabad itself feels like this purpose-built anomaly. It's on a grid. It's quiet, green, leafy, highly bureaucratic.
Our sources often call it the Canberra of Asia or a bedroom city. And that's pretty accurate. It is surprisingly boring.
Which, for a logistics planner, is a huge, huge asset.
It's the perfect staging ground. You have modern utilities, working roads, easy Ubers, relative calm. And that calm is essential for your first 24 hours.
Because this is where you have to do two non-negotiable logistical tasks that will basically define the success of the rest of your trip.
You have to secure a local SIM card, and you have to exchange your cash. All of it.
Right. And that efficiency lets you breathe and prepare before you commit to the big drive. If you skip this part, if you try to handle Sims or cash up in the mountains, you are setting yourself up for failure.
You're already behind.
The world changes the moment you get on that road north. At first, leaving Islamabad, you're in these beautiful, lush, green foothills near Abbottabad. You might be thinking, oh, this is lovely. This is easy.
That feeling of ease lasts right up until you hit the geographical breakpoint. And that is crossing the Thakat Bridge over the Indus River.
What happens there?
The moment you are across that bridge, the entire visual world changes instantly. It goes from green to arid, gray, and brown. The trees vanish, the mountains close in. That's when you know you're in the Karakoram.
And right after that, the endurance test really begins, the chalice section.
Ugh, Chilas. It's notorious. Because you're at a low altitude, but you're deep inside this rocky enclosed valley, it just becomes an absolute furnace.
Temperatures can hit 40 degrees Celsius. That's 104 Fahrenheit.
Easily. And the heat just radiates off the rock. It assaults the vehicle. It's relentless.
And that heat, plus the length of the drive, the road quality, that's the early transit experience. It is pure endurance.
And then you add the driving style.
Oh, man. It's not just a drive. I can only describe it as a kind of ballet of death. It is terrifying and unique and strangely beautiful all at once.
The famous jingle trucks, these magnificent, beautifully decorated works of art on wheels, they do not believe in lane discipline. They use sheer size and momentum as their main negotiation tools.
They just barrel down the center line, forcing every smaller vehicle, including yours, to hug the ragged shoulder of the road.
And you look out your window, and there are often no guardrails. None. Just 1,000-foot, sheer, unprotected drop down to this churning, muddy river below.
It is a constant white-knuckle experience. You have to place absolute faith in your driver. You realize these guys are masters of this terrain.
Yeah.
It's terrifying confidence.
Yes. They navigate this insane landscape with a confidence that both eases your mind and puts you on even higher alert somehow.
But the emotional payoff for all this suffering is immense. The turning point comes after maybe, 24 hours of total transit when you finally hit the Gilgit region.
And the air quality just instantly changes. The oppressive heat disappears. The air becomes crisp and clean and cool.
And then comes the moment of awe. You see Rakaposhi, standing at 7,788 meters.
It's one of the world's most dramatic mountains because it doesn't just sit on a range. It rises straight up, almost vertically, from the valley floor right next to the road.
It's a massive, impossible wall of rock and ice that just fills your entire field of vision.
And that sighting, that's the psychological inflection point. That's the moment where your internal, is this worth it, meter just decisively ticks over to a resounding, permanent yes.
The sheer incomprehensible scale of that one mountain, after you've endured the heat and the terrifying drive, it justifies everything that came before.
It really does.
All right, let's get to the spreadsheets. The cold, hard numbers. This is section 3, the money maze. And then we need to reset expectations here because people hear South Asia and they just think cheap.
Right, but the sources are clear. While Pakistan can be doot cheap, the costs stack up very quickly for any serious mountain trek.
Why is that?
Because you're paying a huge premium for reliable logistics in a place where reliable infrastructure is, well, scarce. You're paying extra for guaranteed transport, for backup generators for electricity.
Because the national grid is notoriously fragile in the mountains.
Exactly. And crucially, you're paying for guaranteed hot water. These are necessities in a cold, high-altitude environment, and they're not standard at the lowest price points.
Okay, so to make this concrete, we've built these cost estimates around a pretty standard, comprehensive 14-day itinerary. This covers the big highlights: Islamabad, a trek to Fairy Meadows, Hunza, the Khunjerab Pass at the China border, and then looping over to Skardu before heading back.
Sounds about right.
So let's start with Band 1, the backpacker. The shoestring budget.
Okay. For this traveler, accommodation is all about minimizing cost. We're talking hostels or the most basic of budget guest houses, often community run, very simple. You're looking at maybe $10 to $15 a night.
And they're probably staying in the main town of Aliabad in Hunza, not the slightly more upmarket Karimabad.
For sure. Now, transport is where the suffering comes in. It is brutal. Maximum suffering for minimum price. You are relying almost entirely on public buses like the Natco service.
And that Islamabad to Gilgit ride is a monumental, cramped 18-hour journey. But it only costs, what, $15 to $20?
That's it. And for local travel, it's all about cheap, shared Hayas vans that only leave when they're completely full.
Food is survival-focused, but delicious. Local dal, roti, lots of chai from roadside stands.
You're spending a tiny amount on food, maybe $5 to $8 a day. Hiking is free, and entry to historic forts is minimal, maybe $5 or $10.
So the total daily budget for the shoestring traveler is an astonishingly low 25 to 35 USD. The verdict is clear. This is incredible, profound travel, but you have to be ready to endure the discomfort of the buses and the lack of amenities.
It requires serious physical and mental endurance.
Okay, now for Band 2, the mid-range.
Yeah.
Comfort and speed. This is where I think most sanity-seeking travelers are going to land, balancing value and pain.
Right. Accommodation here is a significant upgrade. You're in dedicated hotels, paying around $40 to $70 a night, and that price guarantees those essentials. A clean room, consistent hot water, and a backup generator for your devices.
And the transport budget is where the biggest jump happens.
Yeah.
This traveler absolutely must hire a private car and driver.
Essential. A standard car like a Toyota Corolla with a dedicated local driver will run you about $80 to $100 per day, plus fuel.
Which sounds like a lot, but if you're traveling as a couple or with a friend, you split that. So it becomes, what, $50, $60 per person per day, which is very manageable.
And it is absolutely worth it for the speed, the flexibility, and the safety.
Food moves up a notch, too. You're eating at local tourist-grade restaurants. You can get more substantial meat dishes, like a good mutton karahi, so maybe $20 a day for food.
The total daily budget for this band, assuming you split the driver cost, lands somewhere around $80 to $120 per person.
And our verdict: this is the absolute sweet spot. Spending this money preserves your sanity, it cuts your transit time dramatically, and it significantly improves your chances of staying healthy, which is huge.
It's a massive asset, given the water issues.
All right, finally, Band 3, the luxury traveler, the high end.
This band is defined by a few exclusive hotel chains. You're talking about the Serena Hotels, the Shangri-La Resort in Skardu, or Luxus Hunza. Accommodation costs here start at $150 and go up to $300 even more per night.
And you're paying for the location and the exclusivity.
Exactly. Transport is also premium. The goal is to avoid the long drive entirely. So this traveler is taking those domestic flights from Islamabad to Skardu, which cost $100 to $150 one way.
And on the ground, they're in a more capable vehicle, like a 4x4 Land Cruiser.
Which can be $150 a day. So if you include high-end dining, the total daily budget jumps sharply. You're looking at anywhere from $300 to $500 plus.
And the verdict here is a bit more nuanced.
It is. While you get incredible views and guaranteed isolation, the service standards in Pakistan rarely match that refined 5-star polish you'd find in, say, Thailand or Bali for the same price. You're paying for remote view and security, not necessarily flawless service execution.
Okay, so beyond those daily costs, we have to talk about the fixed, non-negotiable costs, specifically for the Fairy Meadows trek.
Ah, yes. Fairy Meadows is a fascinating microeconomic case study in what happens when you have a geographical monopoly.
How so?
To get to the trailhead, you have to take a jeep up this notoriously dangerous road. That jeep ride is controlled by a local cartel in the village below. The price is absolutely fixed. It's non-negotiable.
Around $50 USD round trip per Jeep.
And you can't haggle. You can't hike it. You are captive to that one logistical bottleneck.
And the accommodation up at Fairy Meadows is a similar story. The basic wooden huts, which are incredibly simple, are what, $40 to $60 a night? Which feels overpriced.
It is overpriced, but the operators have a complete monopoly on that single world-class view of Nanga Parbat. You're paying for the view, not the comfort.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what's the overall value proposition here?
Even though it's a bit more expensive than, say, Nepal or India, the value is still phenomenal. Travelers are seeing 8,000-meter peaks, these massive walls of rock and ice, for what is roughly the price of a single night in a London hostel.
That's a powerful comparison. You're getting immense scale for a fraction of what you'd pay in Patagonia or the Alps.
But that fractional cost comes with significant logistical pain. And that pain is why it's a bit pricier than India or Nepal. Nepal has its established tea house infrastructure.
Right, a tea house every 2 hours of hiking.
Exactly. And India, for all its chaos, has an incredibly robust and cheap train system. Pakistan lacks that reliable train network entirely, which forces travelers into paying for difficult, specialized road transport. And that's what drives up the cost for those mid-range and luxury bands.
Okay, this next segment is absolutely critical. These are the planning traps that, if you ignore them, will completely ruin your trip. We're calling them the trip savers.
And first up is trap #1, the flight gamble. We mentioned that 50% cancellation rate on the Islamabad to Skardu or Gilgit flights. Everyone wants to take this flight.
Of course. It's supposed to be one of the most stunning sights in the world. You fly right past Nanga Parbat.
You do. But here's the fix, and it requires understanding the technical limitation. These flights operate strictly on what are called visual flight rules, or VFR, meaning the pilot cannot rely on instruments the way a modern commercial jet does. They have to fly low enough to visually see the ground and the peaks around them.
Because they're flying through these incredibly deep valleys surrounded by 8,000-meter mountains.
Precisely. So if there is a single layer of cloud cover near those peaks, visibility is gone, and the flight is canceled. No exceptions. You just get bumped to the next day.
Which might also be canceled.
Right. So here's the absolute crucial rule. Do not book your international flight home based on a tight domestic connection from the mountains. You must always have a Plan B driver secured and on standby for that 16-hour emergency drive back to Islamabad.
So if your 8 a.m. mountain flight cancels, you're not panicking at the airport. You're in a private car by 9 a.m.
Exactly. Proactive, not reactive.
Okay, trap #2. The ATM drought. Cash is king. We've established that. Relying on plastic is a fatal error.
It is a trip-altering disaster. We've seen so many anecdotes about this. Running out of cash in a remote village like Pasu is catastrophic. You can't buy fuel, you can't pay your guest house owner, you can't hire a jeep.
And once you leave the main hubs like Gilgit or Karimabad, ATMs are basically mythical creatures.
And even if you find one, the infrastructure is so unreliable it'll probably reject your foreign MasterCard or Visa anyway. So you're left stranded with a working card but zero physical currency.
So what's the fix?
The fix. Bring 100% of your total estimated budget in hard foreign currency. USD, euros, pounds. When you arrive in Islamabad, you go straight to a reputable exchange, and you change a minimum of 70% of that cash right then and there.
Do not gamble on finding a working ATM in the mountains.
Ever.
Okay, trap #3. The Google Maps lie. It's the time dilation trap, and it catches everyone. Google Maps estimates are wildly inaccurate for the KKH. It might say Islamabad to Chilas is 9 hours.
Which is pure fantasy. The actual drive time, even in a private car, is closer to 14 hours, sometimes 16.
And you have to account for these non-negotiable delays. There are mandatory police registration checkpoints where your driver has to stop.
There are military convoys that force you to wait. And of course, there are necessary tea breaks for your driver, who is navigating one of the most dangerous roads on Earth and needs to stay alert.
So the fix is simple.
The fix. Multiply every single Google Maps drive time estimate by a minimum of 1.5. And never, ever plan a connecting activity for the evening of a travel day. Plan to arrive, eat, and immediately collapse.
Right. And what about staying connected? Your phone, international roaming is going to die pretty quickly once you get into the mountains, right?
It dies as soon as you get past Abbottabad. The only network that works reliably in the high-altitude Gilgit-Baltistan region is SCOM.
So,
It's a specialized military-run network. It was specifically built for communication in these extreme valleys where commercial networks just can't penetrate the rock and ice.
so SCOM is the fix. But there's a logistical catch, isn't there?
There is. Foreign travelers often can't buy a SCOM SIM card easily in Islamabad. You have to wait until you reach the regional hub of Gilgit to get one.
So you have to expect to be completely offline for the first 24 to 48 hours of your journey, which is another reason why getting your cash and drivers sorted in Islamabad is so vital.
You all connected.
Finally, timing. When is the best time to go? The window for the full experience is pretty short.
It's short and unforgiving. The ideal window for maximum accessibility and stable weather is June to September.
What about the shoulder season, October?
October is absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
The trees in Hunza turn this magnificent gold color, but the nights get dramatically cold and you risk early snowfalls closing the higher trekking routes.
At winter.
The KKH technically stays open, but all the high passes and most trekking routes are completely closed by snow. So for the full experience we're talking about, you really have to aim for that June to September window.
All right, let's confront the biggest fear that many travelers have: safety and comfort. When a lot of people hear the word Pakistan, their minds immediately jump to terrorism, largely because of years of intense global news coverage.
It's the elephant in the room. We have to address it directly. But we have to rely on the reality reported by countless travelers on the ground in the specific tourist regions we're discussing.
So in the main areas, Hunza, Stardew, Geyser, what's the reality?
The crime rate is virtually non-existent.
Really?
Yes. The sources consistently indicate that it often feels significantly safer from things like petty crime than major Western cities like London or New York. It's a testament to the community that you can genuinely leave your camera on a cafe table in Karimabad, walk away, and come back to find it still there.
And what about official requirements? Do you need special permits?
For the standard KKH tourist route we're discussing, travelers are generally fine, no excessive paperwork. Now, if you plan to stray way off that main track or you're on a specific non-tourist visa, you might need something called a no objection certificate, or NOC.
But for the average traveler sticking to the KKH, that initial global safety concern is largely misplaced.
It is. The real dangers are logistical, not political. The actual real-world risk factors have absolutely nothing to do with global politics or crime.
They're purely geological and infrastructural.
Exactly. Risk factor number one, by a huge margin, is the driving. The KKH itself is extremely dangerous just because of its sheer exposure. Fatal car accidents are, unfortunately, a frequent occurrence.
Given the narrow roads, the lack of guardrails, the aggressive driving.
That is your primary safety hazard, far, far above any other risk.
And risk factor two is that geological instability we talked about, landslides.
Getting stuck for hours while bulldozers clear rocks the size of a car or even a small house is a common, almost daily event during the monsoon season. You have to accept that your schedule is completely dictated by these natural interruptions.
You can just stop moving for 6 hours at any moment.
At any moment. Now let's talk about the comfort killer, health and hygiene. This is the single largest point of failure for traveler comfort.
And we have to reiterate this. The idea that getting stomach sick is a when, not an if. That sounds like a complete deterrent. Is there any source that suggests the risk is lower, or is this really a necessary evil?
Unfortunately, the consensus is that it's a necessary evil that you just have to manage proactively, and the source of the problem is the water.
It looks so pure, though. It's glacial water.
It looks pristine, but it contains two major problems. First, fine mica silt, which your body struggles to process and it causes mechanical distress. And second, crucially, bacteria and parasites from livestock grazing upstream.
So the fix has to be twofold. One method isn't enough.
Insufficient protection. You absolutely must use a high-quality filter bottle and purification tablets. The filter handles the silt, the tablet handles the bacteria, and you never, ever drink or even brush your teeth with tap water. Assume it's all contaminated.
And some practical preparation is needed for the toilet situation.
Yes. Outside of those Band 2 and Band 3 hotels, Western-style toilets are a true rarity. You will be using squat toilets.
So the advice for people with mobility issues, or just travelers who aren't used to them?
It's simple. Practice using a squat toilet before you go, because you will encounter them, often in very rustic conditions.
Okay, finally, let's cover the important and nuanced advice for women travelers. The cultural contrast along the KKH is significant and requires real awareness.
It really does. The Hunza Valley, as we noted, is majority Ismaili, and it's highly liberal. It is remarkably relaxed. Women run businesses. They generally don't cover their heads. The vibe is modern and educated. It feels culturally distinct from the rest of the country.
But then you enter the transit zones. Chilis, Kovistan.
And the culture becomes extremely conservative. You will rarely see women outside, and the dress code expectation shifts dramatically toward tradition.
So the general advice is to dress modestly everywhere, but be especially aware in those transit zones. Loose trousers, a long shirt or kurta that covers your backside.
And always keep a scarf handy. Always. You can adapt quickly. And yes, you will experience intense staring.
We have to clarify that. In most cases, where is that coming from?
It's almost always stemming from cultural curiosity. You are in regions that rarely see foreign travelers, especially foreign women. It is not generally predatory behavior. It can feel deeply unsettling, but understanding the context that you are an extreme novelty helps minimize that psychological discomfort. Preparation is everything.
We've covered the logistics, the pain, the price. Now let's focus entirely on the reward. What are the peak moments that makes those 16-hour drives and the stomach issues actually worthwhile?
For me, the absolute high point is the Eagle's Nest viewpoint up above Karimabad and Hunza.
Yeah.
If you time it for sunset, it is a transformative experience.
What do you see?
You look down and you're watching Rakaposhi, and all the neighboring giant peaks turn this magnificent, impossible shade of pink, and you can see the Hunza River snaking through the valley hundreds and hundreds of feet below. It gives you this profound, ancient feeling, like you're in the middle of history.
That sounds incredible. My second peak moment would be the Fairy Meadows trek itself, the culmination of that hike. When you clear the final tree line and you were just confronted by Nanga Parbat.
The Killer Mountain.
It just explodes into view. It's this immense, seemingly unreal wall of ice and rock.
The scale is just impossible to comprehend from photos. You have to be standing there in its shadow. It's not just a peak. It's a colossal wall that rises almost 5,000 vertical meters straight up from the valley floor.
That feeling of being confronted by sheer geological size is just unmatched.
It really is. And speaking of surreal beauty, the journey across Adabad Lake is a profound emotional moment.
Because the lake itself was formed by a tragedy,
Yeah.
right? A 2010 landslide.
A massive landslide that blocked the Hunza River, buried entire villages, and displaced thousands of people.
But the result of that tragedy is this intensely, unnaturally turquoise lake.
And gliding across it by boat with these jagged peaks rising out of that blue water, it's a moment of profound, unsettling beauty. A beautiful place born from a horrific, raw event.
But the highs bring us straight to the disappointments. The hype traps that, unfortunately, can break that immersion and challenge the whole Utopia narrative.
And number one, for me, is the environmental heartbreak. The trash and the pollution. This is the single biggest disappointment cited in the sources.
Fairy Meadows, ironically, is becoming a garbage dump.
It's heartbreaking. The proliferation of plastic water bottles, tourist wrappers, abandoned gear in such a pristine, high-altitude environment, it just destroys that sense of natural immersion that draws you there.
Disappointment number two is the glamping craze. The sudden, aggressive spread of those white plastic geodesic domes.
Oh, they ruin the landscape. They just offer this cheap, manufactured experience. They look terrible against the rock faces, and they offer awful comfort. They're boiling hot during the day and freezing at night.
So the advice is to actively seek out the traditional stone or wood guest houses.
Absolutely. And disappointment three, the Hussaini Suspension Bridge. Thanks to Instagram, it's now basically a theme park ride.
You're waiting in line for an hour just for a photo op.
An hour-long queue to walk on a wobbly rope bridge for a picture. The sense of raw adventure is just completely on. It's been replaced by a commercialized choke point.
Okay, so if the 16-hour drives and the guaranteed dysentery sound like too much, we need to offer some sanity-saver alternatives.
For sure. Option one, Kyrgyzstan. You get a similar Central Asian mountain experience in the Tian Shan range. The roads are objectively better, the visa process is simple, and you can sleep in traditional yurts. It's an easier trek overall.
What's the trade-off?
The peaks are lower, mostly in the 7,000-meter range versus the 8,000-meter giants of the Karakoram. And let's be honest, the food is objectively worse. You have to be prepared for fermented mare's milk.
An acquired taste, to be sure. What's option two?
Option two, Nepal, specifically the Annapurna circuit. The main draw here is the reliable infrastructure bubble. You have tea houses every 2 hours of hiking. You don't need to haul extensive supplies or worry about finding a place to sleep.
And the trade-off there is the crowds.
Huge crowds. In peak season, the Annapurna circuit can feel like you're walking in a slow-moving line of people. Pakistan, by comparison, is still blissfully empty once you step off the main highway.
And what if you are committed to Pakistan, but you just despise the idea of that drive? There's an in-country alternative.
The combo itinerary, the sanity saver. The plan is highly targeted. You spend 3 days in Lahore for the deep Mughal culture, the incredible food, the history.
And then you bypass the KKH drive entirely by flying directly into the mountain Bubble Skardu, or Gilgit, and then flying back to Islamabad.
This skips the entire headache of the drive. No childless furnace, minimal landslide risk. It does increase your budget because of the flights, and that 50% cancellation risk is still there.
So you need a flexible schedule.
But you get to experience the historical heart of the country and the K2 region without the dust, the heat, and the constant fear of a car accident.
And so we have arrived. The final verdict matrix. We've covered the whole journey, from the logistical price of admission to the spiritual reward of seeing Rakaposhi. The overall assessment seems clear. It's a 7 out of 10 for difficulty. It requires serious patience.
Patience above all else. This trip tests your capacity to accept the unexpected like nothing else.
But it's a decisive 10 out of 10 for the reward. So let's deliver the final, nuanced answers based on the traveler types we defined earlier.
Let's start with the backpacker. Budget under $40 a day?
This is a 100% yes. This is the holy grail of adventure backpacking right now. It's incredibly cheap, it's wild, the community is so strong, and hitchhiking is surprisingly easy. You have the time and the energy to endure the buses. Go now, before it gets gentrified.
Okay, next. The mid-range couple. Budget of around $150 a day.
This is a yes, but with conditions. The condition is non-negotiable. You must hire the private driver. Do not, under any circumstances, try to save money by taking the public bus together.
The traveler report suggests that trying to save that $50 a day on transport will jeopardize the relationship. The stress, the heat, the duration. It's a recipe for disaster.
Control your transport, and this will be the trip of a lifetime, not a test of your patience with each other.
All right, the family. Traveling with young kids.
That's a NO. The medical infrastructure is just too basic and too remote. If a child gets seriously sick, which is a strong possibility, the local facilities are very rudimentary. And those 16-hour drives are just too long for any child under their mid-teens. Wait until they can appreciate the endurance.
And finally, the luxury traveler.
This is a maybe. It's only worth the investment if you commit to flying both ways and exclusively using the Serena-level hotels. If you are expecting Swiss standards of service and polished amenities, you will be disappointed.
But if you desire what we're calling rough luxury, meaning guaranteed safety, incredible views, total isolation, but without those polished service standards, then it's a go.
So the consensus is strong. The journey is fundamentally challenging. You have to earn every single view, but the reward is just disproportionately high.
And we are in complete agreement on the single best time to go, which minimizes the crowds but maximizes the fruit and the weather.
September. The fruit is ripe, the weather is stable, the big summer crowds are gone, and the chance of those catastrophic summer mudslides has diminished just a little.
You know, this all raises a really important question for the listener, I think. One that the KKH just forces you to consider. In an age where travel has become so homogenized, so standardized, so packaged, where convenience is the highest virtue.
Is the necessity of high-difficulty travel the only way left to access truly authentic, profound, human, and natural experiences?
That's what the Karakoram Highway demands from you. You have to earn that view. You have to earn that quiet moment looking at Rakaposhi at sunset. You have to endure the grit to appreciate the gold.
But the final practical takeaways are essential. If you are going, what are the two things you absolutely must pack?
Imodium for the inevitable stomach sickness.
Yeah.
And cash. Lots of cash, because the logistics of the journey absolutely demand it.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The final thought from all our sources. This journey is earned, moment by moment, mile by grueling mile. And while it is challenging, the sheer scale of the landscape, the beauty of the valleys, and the overwhelming hospitality make all that difficulty overwhelmingly worthwhile.
Go, but know you have to earn it. Good luck on the Karakoram Highway.